At 55, I thought I had it all. A corner office in a high-rise downtown, a seven-figure income, colleagues who respected me, clients who called me a genius. I was the man who made it, all by sacrificing sleep, weekends, and yes, family dinners. Then one day, my son opened the door halfway, stared at me blankly, and said 5 words that shattered everything I'd built. "This house has no room for strangers." I stood there, holding a gift for my grandson's birthday, one I wasn't invited to. The door didn't slam, it just closed, slowly, quietly. But in that silence, the truth roared louder than anything I'd ever heard. In that moment, I realized what I had traded away. I had climbed every ladder, but missed every milestone. I had earned awards, but lost my family's trust. I had written checks for college, but never showed up for graduation. What came next forced me to confront a question I'd buried for decades. Can a man rebuild what he destroyed, even when he's too late? This isn't a story about success. It's a story about losing everything money can't buy, and what it takes to earn it back. If you're someone chasing the next promotion, the next bonus, the next win, stay. You might just realize the most important thing in life is already walking away. It had been 3 years since I'd seen my son. 3 years since the last strained Thanksgiving, where he spent more time clearing plates than speaking to me. 3 years of holidays spent in airport lounges, watching families I didn't know hold hands and laugh while I buried myself in spreadsheets and strategic calls. 3 years of texts left unread, voicemails never returned, and an inbox full of promotions from airlines instead of invitations from my family. But today was different. Today I was going to make things right. I stood outside the modest suburban home, gripping the gift bag in both hands like it might collapse if I let go. Inside was a science kit. Perfect for age 6, the woman at the toy store had said. My grandson was turning 6. I hadn't been invited to the party, but I came anyway. Surely, I thought, showing up had to count for something. The door creaked open after a long pause. Ethan stood there, taller than I remembered, leaner. His eyes scanned me like I was a solicitor, not the man who once held him in hospital blankets. "Ethan," I started, offering the bag. I brought something for Jacob." His lips didn't twitch. His eyes didn't soften. Then, slowly, he said, "This house has no room for strangers." And he closed the door. Not slammed, not angry, just closed. I stood there a full minute after the latch clicked. The air around me didn't move. My chest did, though, tightened, twisted, like something sharp had quietly punctured it. I looked down at the bag. It felt ridiculous now. Too cheerful, too colorful, like I was trying to tape over a broken window with wrapping paper. I walked back to the rental car and sat inside with the engine off. For 20 minutes, I didn't move. Just stared through the windshield like some invisible scene might replay and go differently this time. I didn't cry. Not yet. That would come later. Back at the hotel, when I sat at the edge of the bed and opened the old leather-bound album I'd brought with me, something I hadn't touched in over a decade. Page after page. Ethan's baby photos. His first steps. His 3rd birthday party. Me, holding the camera, never in the frame. Lisa, my ex-wife, always smiling for both of us. I turned another page. Ethan's high school graduation. A blurry group shot. Lisa, his friends, teachers, no sign of me. I kept flipping. College, wedding, nothing. There were entire years of my son's life that I'd only seen through digital updates or secondhand mentions from Lisa. Moments that happened while I was thousands of miles away, closing million-dollar deals and giving motivational keynotes about leadership and work ethic. I closed the album. My hands trembled. I couldn't tell if it was from guilt or grief, maybe both. I reached for my phone, unlocked it, and tapped on the contact labeled Ethan. Just his name. No emoji, no photo. I stared at the thread. The last message I sent was 2 years ago. "Happy birthday, son. Hope it's a great one." No reply. No read receipt. No memory of the exact date I had sent it. I froze. What day was Ethan's birthday? I blinked, searched my mind, tried to picture a calendar. January? No, that was Lisa. March? No. Wait. I didn't know. I, Daniel Morgan, financial strategist, former executive director of a Fortune 100 firm, man who could recall earnings reports from 1998, couldn't remember the birth date of my only son. I leaned forward, pressing my elbows into my knees, burying my face in my palms. This house has no room for strangers. Of course it didn't. I was a stranger. Not just to my grandson, who didn't even know my name, but to Ethan. To the boy who once scribbled "Best Dad Ever" on a Father's Day card, back when I used to at least be around on Sundays. I had convinced myself for years that I was providing, chaktito, that every sacrifice, every missed soccer game, every rescheduled birthday dinner, every unread bedtime story was for the greater good of our family. I wasn't absent, I told myself. I was invested, building a future, securing comfort. But standing outside that door today, I realized the future I built had no room for me. I'd bought the house, paid for the college, covered the wedding, but I never showed up. Not really. Not when it counted. And now my son had drawn a line in the sand. He hadn't yelled, hadn't cursed me. He'd simply told the truth. I was no longer part of the story. The year I won CEO of the Year, the ballroom was packed. Executives, clients, media. Applause thundered as I stepped onto the stage, a spotlight warming my tailored suit, a plaque in my hand that read, "For unmatched leadership and vision." Cameras flashed. My speech was tight, rehearsed, inspiring. I even cracked a joke that landed. My colleagues stood for a standing ovation, but the seat I reserved at the front table, marked Ethan Morgan, remained empty. I'm sure he had class, I told myself. Midterms, maybe. Something reasonable, something forgivable. What I didn't admit, not even to myself, was that I hadn't spoken to Ethan in weeks, and that I had no idea whether he even received the invitation. He'd stopped answering my calls sometime that spring. I chalked it up to teenage mood swings, stress, hormones, whatever term made me feel better. It was easier to blame adolescence than to confront the possibility that my son simply didn't want to be around me. The signs had started earlier. Subtle things. He'd linger at the dinner table longer when I wasn't home. He'd lock his bedroom door even when Lisa knocked. He never brought friends over. Never asked me for help with schoolwork anymore. And yet, I was always convinced things were fine. After all, the lights stayed on, the fridge was full, his tuition was covered. I was doing my job as a provider, right? But Lisa had known better. It was 2 years before the award night. I was in the middle of closing a deal in Chicago when her voice cracked through the phone. "Dan," she said, shaky. "It's Ethan. He's in the ER. He collapsed during practice. They think it might be his heart." My stomach dropped. "I'll be back tomorrow," I replied. "There's no earlier flight. This meeting—" "Dan, please," she interrupted. "Just come, cancel it, please." Silence. Then I said the words I would regret more than most in my life. I can't. When I returned the next evening, Ethan was discharged. Diagnosis: dehydration, not fatal, not permanent. But something else had broken in that hospital room, and it wasn't medical. Lisa didn't yell. She didn't cry that night. Not then. But the way she looked at me, that blend of disappointment and resignation, cut deeper than any scream. 2 weeks later, she left a folded letter on the kitchen table. I still remember the handwriting on the envelope. Daniel. Inside were 4 paragraphs. Calm, measured, devastating. She said she no longer recognized the man she married, that our marriage had become a conference call, that Ethan didn't ask about me anymore, that she felt like a single mother with a full-time roommate. She asked for a trial separation. I didn't respond to the letter directly. Instead, I brought home flowers the next day, booked a weekend getaway to the coast, promised things would slow down soon. She nodded, smiled thinly, played along, and I let the moment pass. Because acknowledging the letter, truly seeing it, would have meant acknowledging the truth, that I was losing everything not in a blaze, but in a slow, suffocating fade. In private, I reassured myself, this is just a rough patch. Lisa's tired. Ethan's a teenager. We're still a family. But that wasn't why I ignored the letter. No, the real reason was simpler and uglier. I was afraid. Afraid of what people would say if they found out the great Daniel Morgan, admired CEO, gave business advice at conferences, but couldn't keep his family together. Afraid of the gossip, the pity, the judgment. Afraid of losing the image of a perfect life. So I stayed, and so did Lisa for a while. But the damage was done. Ethan stopped calling me Dad, just hey, or you. Lisa started sleeping with the door closed. Dinner became separate meals. Family became a silent arrangement. I wasn't physically absent, but emotionally, spiritually, I was a ghost. And still, I told myself I was winning. I had the house, the job, the suits, the title. I was on magazine covers, featured on panels, asked to mentor rising leaders. I'd walk into a room and people would hush in admiration. But when I walked into my own home, nothing. No excitement, no warmth, just silence and the occasional flicker of irritation in Lisa's eyes. The glory I chased outside made me a stranger inside. I confused being applauded with being loved. I thought being a good provider meant being a good father. I thought holding it all together meant never showing weakness, never being vulnerable. I thought wrong. The email came at 10:13 a.m., subject line. Ethan graduation video, thought you'd want to see this. It was from Lisa. Just the subject alone stirred something dull and heavy in my chest. Not pain, not quite. More like pressure. Like when you realize you're late to something important, but still tell yourself there's time. I clicked it open, just as my Zoom meeting was beginning. The video thumbnail showed Ethan in a navy blue cap and gown, standing on a stage under bright sunlight, arms raised. He was smiling, wide, unfiltered, the kind of smile I hadn't seen in years. His mother stood next to him, clapping. There were others, friends, maybe professors, maybe family I didn't recognize. I hit play. Hey, everyone, Lisa's voice said from behind the camera. Look who made it. Ethan looked into the lens. He didn't say my name, didn't mention me, didn't even pause. I watched for 7 seconds. Then someone on my laptop said, Daniel, you're on mute. And I reflexively closed the video and unmuted myself. I apologize. Go ahead, Brad, I said, smiling as if nothing had just cracked wide open inside me. The meeting lasted 43 minutes. I nodded, contributed, even shared a strategic insight that someone typed into the chat with a clapping emoji. When it ended, I sat there staring at my screen. I didn't go back to the video. Not that day. Not the next. Not ever. 2 months later, Lisa called. She rarely did anymore, and never without a reason. "Ethan got married?" she said, blunt. I blinked. "What?" "Last weekend. Small ceremony, backyard, very quiet. Just his wife's family, a few friends." My grip tightened on the phone. "I wasn't invited?" There was a pause on her end. Then, "Daniel, he didn't want you there." I laughed once, a bitter, humorless thing. "So this is how it's going to be? He's going to punish me forever?" Lisa didn't respond right away. Then she said, "It's not punishment. It's a boundary." I hated the word. Boundary. It sounded like therapy speak, like something pulled from a podcast episode titled "Healing from Toxic Parents." "I paid for his college," I said. "I gave him a place to grow up. That house you still live in, my name's on it." Lisa sighed, tired and small. "This isn't about money, Daniel. It never was." I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but instead I hung up. Not out of anger, out of something far worse. Shame I didn't know how to face. That night, I searched for Ethan on Facebook. Nothing. I tried Instagram, then Twitter, then LinkedIn. Blank. 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 Not just absent, invisible. It took me 10 minutes to realize what had happened. I wasn't just out of his life. I'd been blocked out of his digital existence. The realization didn't hit all at once. It crept in like fog, dense and cold. Blocked, like a stranger. A threat. A ghost. I stared at the "no results found" screens as if they might change. As if my son would reappear with a message. "Sorry, technical glitch. Here's everything you've missed." But nothing changed. He had erased me. Not loudly, not violently, but with quiet precision. Like cutting a thread and watching the kite drift out of sight. I closed my laptop. I was breathing heavily, as if I'd just run a race. My hands shook, not from rage, but from the hollow weight settling inside me. I sat in the dark for hours. Thought about the backyard where he'd said his vows. Wondered if Lisa had cried. If he'd smiled like he did in that graduation clip I never finished watching. I wondered what kind of man my son had become. And then, deeper still, I wondered, had I ever really known him? The truth clawed at me. I knew his SAT score, but not his favorite song. I knew his major, not why he chose it. I knew he liked basketball when he was 8, but I didn't know if he still played. Because I'd stopped asking. Because I was always on the move, on a call, on a plane. Because every time he tried to pull me closer, I offered upgrades, not presents. I had become a vending machine. Insert request, out comes tuition. Out comes a new laptop, out comes a car. But never me. Never Daniel, the father. Only Daniel, the provider. Sometime after midnight, I opened my email again. The graduation video still sat in the inbox, unread. I clicked play again, forced myself this time. The sunlight, the music, Ethan grinning, Lisa cheering. Then something I hadn't noticed before. A moment, brief, where Ethan looked out toward the camera, and his eyes softened. Not at the camera, really. Through it. Beyond it. Almost like he was searching. For me? No. Probably not. But still. I watched the whole clip, all 3 minutes and 22 seconds. And when it ended, I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blame, just sat there, finally watching the life I was no longer part of. I didn't plan on going back to the cafe. It just happened. Like muscle memory pulling me toward a place my mind had long ignored. A narrow corner shop with squeaky floors and too many Edison bulbs. Ethan used to love it here. Back in high school, it was our Saturday ritual. Hot chocolate for him, black coffee for me, and a chessboard between us we rarely finished. I hadn't been back in over a decade. The barista was new. The playlists had changed. But the corner booth, our booth, was still there. Worn leather, initials carved in the wood by someone else's nostalgia. I ordered a coffee and sat in silence, unsure why I was there, until I heard my name. "Mr. Morgan?" I turned. A young man stood a few feet away. Scruffy beard, faded hoodie, a hint of recognition in his eyes. "It's me, Kevin. I went to school with Ethan. We used to hang out here." I blinked. Time had blurred his face, but I remembered the name. Ethan's old best friend. Always polite, a little shy. He used to come over for sleepovers when they were 12. We talked, surface level at first. Work, weather, memories. Then, after a long pause, Kevin stirred his drink and said, "You know, Ethan used to talk about you." I looked up. "Back in college," he continued, "someone once asked him why you never came to events. He said, 'I don't have a dad. I have a guy who pays tuition and sends texts twice a year.'" The words hit with surgical precision. I managed a nod, but the inside of my chest burned like acid. "He wasn't angry when he said it," Kevin added quickly. "Just tired, like he'd given up expecting anything more." I thanked him, told him to take care, and left without finishing my coffee. Back home, I stood in front of the filing cabinet in my study. Top drawer, bottom drawer, left side, right. I wasn't sure what I was looking for until my hand landed on an old manila folder, unlabeled, creased. I pulled it out, sat at the desk, and opened it. Bills, reports, an expired passport, and then a blue envelope. The handwriting on the front was jagged, young, full of effort. "To Dad." I froze, slid my finger under the flap. Inside was a letter dated 13 years ago. "Dear Dad," it began. "I hope you're not too busy to read this. I know you have important things to do. But next Friday, there's an award ceremony at school. I'm getting the Academic Excellence Award. Only 2 students in the whole grade get it. They said we could invite our parents. I would really like you to come. I'll be on stage at 6 p.m. in the gym. Mom said she'll be there early. I hope you will too. Love, Ethan." I set the letter down, hands trembling. I had never opened it, never even remembered receiving it. The envelope wasn't sealed anymore. Maybe Lisa had opened it when cleaning. Maybe I'd shoved it aside without looking, assuming it was a thank you card or a birthday drawing past its due date. I had missed the award. I had missed his pride, his courage to ask. I had missed the last time my son reached out in hope, instead of silence. The air in the room shifted, heavy, dense, like the weight of a decade collapsed in one breath. I thought of that night. What had I done instead? Probably been on a flight. Probably closed a deal. Probably stood in front of strangers, smiling, while my son stood on stage scanning the crowd for a face that never arrived. My chair creaked as I leaned back. I wanted to tear the letter in half, to hide from it, but I couldn't, because for the first time in years, I was holding proof, not of my guilt, but of his hope. A hope I'd failed to honor. Later that night, I placed the letter on my bedside table. No frame, no glass, just paper. Raw, honest. And I stared at it until sleep finally came. Uneasy and slow, like a man trying to find rest in a house he no longer belonged to. The speech took 2 days to write. I practiced it in the mirror, refined each sentence, rehearsed every pause like a stage actor desperate for a standing ovation. I even printed it out, just in case nerves overtook memory. I imagined Ethan standing in the doorway, arms crossed, skepticism in his eyes, but softening maybe when he heard my words. "I'm sorry, son. I was wrong. I should have been there." Short, honest, straightforward. I bought a book, too, something thoughtful, a leather-bound edition of To Kill a Mockingbird. It was the first novel we'd read together when he was 12. I thought maybe he'd remember. Maybe it would mean something. I even wore the sweater Lisa once said made me look less like a CEO and more like a person. I drove to his house early in the morning, parked half a block away, took a deep breath, another, checked my breath in the rearview mirror. Then I walked to the front door, heart pounding, palms sweating. I knocked. The sound of footsteps. The door opened. Ethan. Same face. Older, harder, eyes like mirrors, reflecting everything I didn't want to see. "Hi," I said, voice catching. "Can we talk?" He didn't move, just looked at me, then at the gift in my hand. "What's that?" he asked flatly. "A book. Something from when you were a kid. I thought you might—" "Why are you here, Dad?" His use of dad stung, not because of affection, but because of how hollow it sounded coming from him, like a title I no longer earned. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," I said, trying to steady my voice. I've been thinking a lot about the past, about everything I missed, everything I should have done differently." He didn't respond. I pulled the paper from my pocket, unfolded it. "I wrote this. I know it sounds scripted, but I wanted to make sure I said it right. Would you mind if I—" "You're just here to feel better," he interrupted, voice sharp but controlled. "Not for me." I froze. He continued. "This isn't about me, Dad. This is about your guilt. You want a quick fix, a clean slate. You think if you say sorry the right way, I'll hug you, and we'll move on." "That's not fair," I said, almost whispering. "No, what's not fair," he snapped, "was being 10 years old and checking the audience at my award ceremony 5 times because I swore you'd walk in late like you always did. What's not fair is Mom covering for you every single birthday and lying for you on Father's Day. What's not fair is growing up learning to expect nothing from you, because that was the only way to not be disappointed." I couldn't breathe. "I'm not here to punish you," he said. "I'm just done." I looked down. The book in my hand felt ridiculous now, like a prop from a play no one wanted to watch. "I'm sorry," I repeated, more to the floor than to him. He didn't answer. The silence stretched, then he stepped back inside, leaving the door ajar. Not wide, not welcoming, just enough to let me place the book gently on the threshold. Then he closed it. No slam, just quiet rejection. Again. I walked back to the car like a man sleepwalking, sat in the driver's seat, stared at the dashboard. He was right. I hadn't come for him. Not really. I came because I couldn't live with myself anymore. Because the silence in my life was deafening. Because the letter I'd found had shattered something inside me, and I wanted him to glue it back together. I wanted forgiveness, not to give him healing, but to relieve my own pain. It had always been about me. My guilt, my narrative, my redemption, even now. Even standing at his door with a gift and a speech and a well-practiced tone, I was still the center of the story, still the star in a movie only I was watching. And for the first time I understood, redemption isn't a performance. It's not something you demand. It's something you earn. one small, silent act at a time. And I hadn't even begun. The video found me. I didn't search for it. Didn't receive it from Lisa or anyone in my family. No warning, no subject line. Just a notification from a colleague. Daniel, you might want to see this. The link opened to a TEDx stage. Red carpet, black backdrop. A young man in a tailored navy suit walked out slowly, holding a wireless mic. It was Ethan. I hadn't seen him like that before. Confident, calm, a voice meant for stages, not silent dinners or awkward visits. The title appeared in white block letters, When a Father is Just a Name. I leaned forward. He didn't mention my name. Never said Daniel or Dad, but every word was mine to carry. When I was a boy, he began, I thought success meant work, money, titles, because that's what I saw my father chase. A pause. He worked late, traveled often, missed birthdays, missed my first soccer goal, missed every ceremony, every concert, every question I was too scared to ask. Laughter from the crowd. Nervous, sympathetic, Ethan didn't flinch. I grew up thinking presence was optional, that love could be wired into bank accounts, that tuition replaced attention. And by the time I realized love needs time, not transactions, he was a stranger. My throat tightened. I used to lie for him, tell my friends he was sick, busy, stuck on a plane. I memorized excuses better than math formulas. I told myself he loved me, just not with time, just not with presence. Ethan's voice dropped lower. But here's what I've learned. A child doesn't remember what you bought them. They remember if you were there. That's what becomes identity. That's what becomes worth. He stepped forward. And if you weren't there, if you chose your nameplate over your name in their heart, then don't expect applause when you show up late with a speech and a smile. The room fell silent. So did I. My eyes burned, not just from tears, but from clarity, blinding, brutal clarity. I paused the video at 9:43. My reflection in the black screen looked older, smaller, not the man who'd built empires, just someone watching them crumble. I didn't go into the office the next morning. Didn't check emails, didn't take calls. By noon, my phone rang. It was HR. Daniel, the voice said, clipped and uncomfortable. We've seen the TEDx video. I swallowed. Yes. So? Board's concerned. The clip's gone viral, 250,000 views in 48 hours. There's already buzz online. People are speculating it's about you. It is about me. Silence on the line. Look, he continued, we're proud of your work, but this is a brand-sensitive role. Optics matter. Until this calms down, the board thinks it's best if you step back. Take a leave. Leave? I echoed. Officially? Administrative pause? Unofficially? Just lay low for a bit. Because my son told the truth? Another pause. We'll keep paying you, he offered. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. By evening, headlines started showing up. Executive's estranged son shares viral talk on absent fatherhood. Power and regret? A TEDx confession that's got everyone talking. People speculated, connected dots. The photo comparisons began. Ethan at graduation, me at a company gala the same week. Online detectives put the story together faster than I had. I sat in my living room, surrounded by awards and framed headlines that now looked like museum exhibits from a life I no longer claimed. It wasn't just public shame. It was poetic. All the success I'd spent years building, carefully, obsessively, had been funded by the very absence that Ethan now exposed. Not maliciously, not for fame, just truthfully. And the world responded. A friend texted me, "This is unfair. He's exploiting your mistakes for attention." But I didn't feel exploited. I felt understood for the first time. Because Ethan hadn't spoken in anger. He had spoken in grief, in clarity, in the voice of every child who learned to live without a parent who was still alive. This wasn't revenge. This was release. His truth had finally found oxygen. And mine? Mine had been buried under luxury, reputation, and long, quiet flights away from responsibility. That night, I walked into my home office, looked at the CEO of the Year plaque on the shelf, held it, and set it face down. Then I reached for the blue envelope again, the one I'd found weeks ago, the one Ethan wrote when he was 13, asking me to come to his award ceremony. I hadn't read it again since the first night, but I knew it by heart now, especially the last line. "I hope you'll be there. If not, I'll understand. I always do." I hadn't just missed his moment. I had taught him that disappointment was normal, that expecting less was wise. I had raised him to believe that being let down was part of loving me. And now the world knew. Not because Ethan wanted to hurt me, but because he needed to heal. And healing sometimes means telling the story, loud enough so that silence doesn't win. I turned off my phone for the first time in 20 years. No silent mode, no vibration, just off. The retreat was held in a quiet lodge 2 hours north of the city. No signal, no suits, no agendas. Just 12 men, most of them older than me, all of us carrying stories we hadn't told until they were too heavy to hold in private. It was called the Reconnect Project. Men who had built empires but lost birthdays. Men who knew the price of ambition when the receipt finally showed up. Men like me. On the second night, we sat in a circle. No stage, no microphones, just folding chairs and firelight. The facilitator, a soft-spoken man named Ron, passed out blank journals. "You have 1 hour," he said, "to write your proudest family memory." Easy, I thought at first. I tapped my pen to the page, wrote the title, "My Proudest Family Memory." Then, nothing. I stared at the paper, tried again. A birthday party? No, I was in Hong Kong. Ethan's graduation? I never went. His first soccer goal? Lisa had texted me the video. First steps. I was on a red-eye to Chicago. I flipped through mental files like an accountant in crisis, grasping for one clean, complete moment I could claim without asterisk, without apology. There was nothing. Not one. Around the circle, pens scratched paper. Heads bowed, a few wiped eyes, a few smiled through the pain. My page stayed blank. I'd written memoirs before, of success, strategy, legacy, but not like this. Not when the measure wasn't profit or prestige, but presence. Not when the standard was love. Ron glanced at me as he collected the journals, didn't comment, just nodded once and moved on. Later that evening, he found me outside, by the edge of the woods, sipping tea I didn't want. "Couldn't think of anything?" he asked gently. I shook my head. "I've got dozens," I said bitterly, "if you count business milestones. But family?" He waited. "I thought maybe I'd write about reading to Ethan at bedtime," I continued. But then I remembered. I stopped doing that when he was 5. Lisa said he cried for me sometimes. I was in Tokyo. He didn't interrupt, just listened. And then I thought maybe I'd write about when we built his science fair volcano. But I only helped with the supply money. Lisa built it with him. He won second place. I saw it in a photo. Ron finally said, "Sometimes the hardest truth is not what we did wrong. It's what we never did at all." That night I stared at the ceiling of my cabin. I wasn't a villain. I hadn't hit, yelled, or disappeared completely. I had provided, paid, protected. But what I hadn't done, what I hadn't been, echoed louder than any boardroom applause. I had been unavailable, not in absence, but in priority. Ethan had grown up learning that everything else, clients, meetings, numbers, strangers, came before him. And I had let him believe that was normal. On the final day, we were asked to share one realization from the week. One man, Charles, spoke of missing his daughter's wedding and now watching her raise a child he barely knew. Another, Jeremiah, admitted he hadn't said "I love you" to his son in over a decade because he never heard it from his father either. When it was my turn, I stood up slowly. "My name is Daniel," I said. "I was once named CEO of the Year, twice actually." Polite laughter. "I've written keynote speeches, corporate handbooks, and shareholder reports. But 2 nights ago, I was asked to write about my proudest family memory. And I couldn't think of one." Silence. Not because there weren't good moments. I'm sure there were. But I wasn't there for them. Or if I was, I wasn't present. I looked around the room. I built a beautiful life for everyone, but I never let myself live in it with them. I sat down. No applause, just nods, which was better. That night, I returned to my journal. This time, I didn't start with my proudest family memory. I started with a question. What memory do I wish I had? And I wrote, a Sunday afternoon. Just me and Ethan. No phones, no agenda, just time. Maybe we play catch. Maybe we burn a pizza. Maybe we laugh. And at the end, I look at him and say, "You matter more to me than anything else in this world." And he believes it, because it's true. I closed the journal. That memory never happened. But maybe one day, something like it still could. I didn't start with "Dear Ethan." I started with the truth. No greetings, no sign-offs, no apologies wrapped in self-defense. Just the facts as I saw them now, not when they happened, not when I tried to justify them, but now, stripped of pride. I wrote about the science fair I never attended, the birthdays I missed, the hospital room I never walked into. I wrote about choosing conference calls over family dinners, red-eye flights over bedtime stories. I didn't say "I'm sorry," not because I wasn't, but because that word had lost all weight from overuse and underaction. Instead, I wrote, "I see it now. I really do. You reached for me more times than I'll ever know, and every time I was looking the other way." I wrote by hand, 4 pages, no edits. I didn't ask him to call, didn't beg for a meeting. I didn't even include a return address. I sealed it, placed it in a plain envelope, and dropped it in the mailbox outside my building. As it slid into the slot, I felt nothing. Not relief, not regret, just quiet. The kind that comes when you finally stop trying to control the story. Weeks passed. Nothing. No message, no acknowledgement, no trace that it had been read, let alone felt. Still, I didn't follow up. That was the old me, the fixer, the persuader, the man who always needed a result. Instead, I focused on the only thing I still had control over, becoming someone worth knowing. I started volunteering at a local shelter, joined a community garden, even though I had no idea what basil looked like in the ground. I learned how to cook meals without microwaving. I called my sister every Sunday. I even dusted off the piano I hadn't touched since Ethan was 5. Still, every time I walked past the mailbox, I wondered. 3 months later, the box arrived. No return name, just a shipping label and my address. Light, but sturdy. I opened it slowly. Inside was a cardboard shoebox, worn and taped at the corners. On the lid, scrawled in faded blue ink, was a single line. "If you can open this box now, maybe you're finally ready." I sat down, heart pounding. I removed the lid. Letters, dozens of them, some in child handwriting, full of misspelled words and cartoon stickers. "Dear Dad, I miss you. We built a fort today. Mom let me have 2 cookies. Can you come to my play? I'm the tree. Happy birthday. You said we could go to the zoo. I'm still waiting." Drawings, crayon sketches of us holding hands. A volcano, a soccer field. One with 3 stick figures, Ethan, Lisa, and me. Though I had a tie and a phone in hand. All unopened, untouched, most still in their original envelopes. I picked one at random and carefully unfolded it. "Dad, are you still coming to the science night? I made a rocket. It goes really high. I saved you a seat." The date, April 16th, 2009. I had been in Madrid, a pitch meeting. I remembered the hotel breakfast, the client dinner, the contract signed that night. I remembered everything except this. My hands trembled as I reached for the next, and the next. A photo of Ethan holding a trophy. A birthday card with a joke only a 10-year-old would laugh at. A Valentine's Day drawing with a crooked heart and the words, "You're my hero." I set it down, choking on breath I couldn't steady. He had tried. Not once, not twice. But year after year, letter after letter, moment after moment, he had invited me into his world, and I never answered. I stared at the lid again. "If you can open this box now, maybe you're finally ready." It wasn't an invitation, not exactly. It was a test, a message. Not for a reunion, but for recognition. He didn't need me to explain anything. He needed me to witness it, to finally see the weight he'd carried alone. I spent the next 3 nights reading every letter, every note, every drawing. No skipping, no scanning. Just reading, remembering, owning. And on the 4th night, I wrote something new. Not another letter. Just one sentence on the back of the very first drawing he ever made of us. I wasn't there then, but I'm here now, and I won't look away again. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time, I knew where to begin. I didn't rush to respond. After I read the last letter from that box Ethan had sent, the one filled with years of silence, I let a week pass, then another. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't draft another dramatic monologue. I didn't try to schedule a meeting or plead for a second chance. Instead, I sat quietly with the weight of it. There was a kind of sacredness in that box. It wasn't just a collection of childhood artifacts. It was a record of missed chances, unopened invitations, and unspoken hope. Ethan had held on to it all this time, not to weaponize, but to witness, to say, "This is what you missed, this is what I carried." It wasn't forgiveness, it was truth. And now that he had placed it in my hands, the next move had to be mine. But not to win, not to fix, to honor. So I wrote him a letter. Just 1 page. I didn't revisit old wounds or reframe history. I didn't explain why I hadn't shown up. I didn't ask him to meet me, forgive me, or even acknowledge me. I simply wrote, "I don't know if you'll ever be ready to talk again. And that's okay. I'm not writing to ask anything of you. I just want you to know, I'll be here. Even if you never write back, I'll be here." I included no return address this time. He already had it. I folded it carefully and sent it through the mail like a paper lantern set on water. Not to chase, not to control, just to let it go. Time passed, weeks, then months. No reply, no knock, no ping of incoming messages. And for once, I didn't check the mailbox obsessively. I didn't pace or spiral. I simply waited, not with expectation, but with acceptance. I had spent a lifetime demanding closure on my own terms. Now, I was learning how to live without it. When Jacob, my grandson, turned 7, I bought him a sketchbook and a pack of colored pencils. I didn't know what kids that age liked anymore, and I didn't want to risk being out of touch with action figures or video game characters. But I remembered Ethan used to draw constantly as a kid. Trees with faces, rockets, dragons, family portraits, before I started disappearing from them. So I chose something simple, something quiet. I wrapped the sketchbook in brown paper, no ribbons, no note, just one word on the outside. For Jacob. I dropped it off at their doorstep when no one was home. I didn't knock. It wasn't a gesture of apology. It was a gesture of presence. 3 weeks later, a small envelope arrived. No name. Crayon handwriting. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a folded piece of paper, a drawing. It was crude but sweet. 3 stick figures, holding hands in front of what looked like a treehouse. One adult had a big round head, glasses, and long arms. A speech bubble said, "Let's climb." Another figure, smaller, said, "Okay, Grandpa?" I smiled, and then I saw the writing at the bottom, clearly dictated but carefully transcribed in a 7-year-old's best effort. "Grandpa, Mom says you used to be bad. Are you better now?" My chest tightened. Not in shame, not in fear, but in awe. This wasn't judgment. It wasn't rejection. It was curiosity, hope even. The kind only a child could offer, honest, unfiltered, and mercifully free of bitterness. I sat down and stared at the picture for a long time. He had drawn me in, not perfectly, not as a hero, but as someone present, someone invited. And in a house where his mother still guarded the doors, and his father still carried wounds with caution, Jacob had cracked the window open. Because children don't care about backstory. They don't demand full reconciliation. They don't wait for perfect apologies or careful explanations. They just want to know if the story has changed, and if they can be part of it. I didn't write back to Jacob. Not yet. Instead, I framed the drawing and placed it on my desk. Next to it, I put a post-it with a single sentence. Be someone worth drawing again. It became my mantra. The next time I went grocery shopping, I picked up a second set of colored pencils, just in case he ever wanted to draw together. I didn't hope for anything more than that. Not a visit, not a phone call, just the chance to be near, to be present, to be better. The call came at 4:16 p.m. on a Thursday. I almost didn't answer. The number wasn't saved, and I'd learned to stop hoping unfamiliar digits would be his. But something, intuition maybe, told me to pick up. "Hello?" I said, cautious. There was a pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in 5 years. "Hey." It was Ethan. My breath caught, like I'd stepped off a ledge and hadn't hit the ground yet. "I got your letters," he said. I waited, afraid that replying too fast might spook him. He continued, voice steady but distant. "Jacob's been talking about you, a lot. That sketchbook, he brings it to school." I smiled gently. "I'm glad he likes it." Another pause. "He wants to see you," Ethan said. My heart fluttered. "You don't have to say anything," he added quickly. "This isn't a reconciliation. It's just a visit, for him." "I'd like that," I said. "Whenever works for you." "Saturday," he said. "Ridgeview Park, noon." Then he hung up. No goodbye, no confirmation. Just a door opened, slightly, warily, but open. I arrived at the park 15 minutes early, wore jeans instead of slacks. left my watch at home, carried nothing but a small paper bag with juice boxes and a new pack of crayons. No grand gestures, just something real. When they arrived, I saw Jacob first, running ahead, arms flailing, smile wide. He spotted me and skidded to a stop. "You came!" he shouted. He barreled into me and I knelt instinctively, catching him in a loose, surprised hug. His head hit my shoulder. He smelled like grass and peanut butter. Behind him, Ethan approached slowly, hands in his pockets. "Guard up." We exchanged a nod. No words. Not yet. Jacob pulled me toward the playground, firing off questions. "Did you really build tree houses? What's your favorite dinosaur? Do you know how to whistle?" I laughed, genuinely. "I did. Triceratops, and sort of." He giggled. "I can't whistle either. That's okay. Let's draw instead." He sat cross-legged on the grass and tore open the crayon box. "You pick a color." I glanced up. Ethan stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching us, not intervening, not leaving, just observing. Jacob tugged my sleeve. "Come on, Grandpa, let's make a rocket." So I sat, and we drew. Rockets and stars and stick figures with capes. It was the most vivid, ridiculous artwork I'd made in decades, and the most meaningful. After an hour, Jacob ran off to climb the jungle gym. I stood up slowly, stretching my back, and turned toward Ethan. He hadn't moved. "Thanks for letting me come," I said quietly. He shrugged, arms still crossed. "Wasn't really about you." "I know." We stood in silence, the kind where everything unsaid sat thick in the air. Then, without warning, Ethan said, "I was ready to forgive you a year ago." I blinked. He looked away, jaw clenched. I had a therapist back then. She helped me unpack a lot of it. The anger, the silence. She told me I didn't need to wait for you to say the right thing, that I could choose peace on my own terms. I swallowed. But every time I thought about calling you, I stopped. He looked back at me now, eyes sharp but not cruel. "Because I didn't think you'd stay." The words sliced through the moment like glass. "You always showed up late," he said. "And you always left early. Even when you were home, you weren't in it. So I figured, what was the point?" My hands trembled slightly, but I kept them at my sides. "I deserved that," I said. "All of it." He nodded once. "Yeah, you did." A breeze passed. The trees rustled. "I didn't call today to forgive you," he added. "I called because Jacob asked why we didn't invite you to his birthday last year, and I didn't have an answer that didn't make me feel like the bad guy." "You're not the bad guy," I said. "No," he agreed. "You were." He said it not with spite, but with clarity, with history, with pain that had been cataloged and labeled. "But," he added after a beat, "you've stayed quiet. You didn't push. You didn't beg." "I had no right to," I said. He looked down, then back up. "Jacob thinks you're some kind of retired wizard," I laughed, choking back emotion. "I can live with that." Ethan smirked, just a flicker. Then it was gone. "But here's the thing," he said. "This, today, doesn't mean anything. Not yet." "I know," I replied, "but it means something to me." He studied me, really studied me. Then quietly he said, "We'll see." And just like that, he turned and walked toward the jungle gym. I stood there, still as stone, letting the moment settle. Because for the first time in 5 years, my son had spoken to me. Not to lecture, not to rage, to test whether I was finally someone worth staying for. And maybe, just maybe, I was. The invitation came folded in construction paper and sealed with a dinosaur sticker. Grandparents' Day, it read in bold, uneven handwriting. Inside, Jacob had written in blue crayon, "Come see my class. I'll show you my rocket drawing. Please come. Love, Jacob." Attached was a photocopied flyer from the school. Time, date, and a note that said, "Snacks provided." I stared at the paper for a long time. It wasn't just the invitation that moved me. It was the certainty in it. The assumption. As if there were no doubt I would show up this time. As if, in Jacob's world, I already had. The elementary school was a red brick building with bright murals and sidewalk chalk art that led to the front entrance. I arrived 20 minutes early, heart thudding like I was about to pitch to a boardroom, but with none of the armor I used to wear. No suit, no title, just me. Inside, the gymnasium buzzed with grandparents and cookies and awkward folding chairs. Teachers fluttered like birds, directing people to tables with name tags shaped like apples. I scanned the crowd and found Jacob's class. He saw me first. "Grandpa!" he shouted, barreling through a group of startled seniors to wrap his arms around my waist. I crouched and hugged him tightly. "Hey there, astronaut." "I told everyone you were coming," he said proudly. "They didn't believe me, but I told them. My grandpa came back." My throat tightened. Before I could speak, he grabbed my hand and pulled me toward a table covered in student art. "This is my rocket," he pointed to a chaotic but enthusiastic drawing. "And this one's a dinosaur rocket. It's silly, but I made it for you." "It's perfect," I said, swallowing emotion. "Absolutely perfect." He looked up at me, squinting. "Are you crying?" "Just allergy tears," I lied. The teacher gathered everyone for introductions. One by one, children stood and introduced their grandparents. When it was Jacob's turn, he walked to the front with a confident bounce in his step. "This is my grandpa," he said, pointing at me. "He came back." The room went quiet. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he said it. With pride, with joy, with zero hesitation. He didn't say he's visiting or this is his first time. He said he came back. As if my absence was just a temporary glitch in a bigger, more hopeful story. As if redemption was already underway. After the event, Ethan approached from the back of the gym. He wore a tired but content expression, hands in his jacket pockets. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Wouldn't have missed it," I replied. He glanced around, as if making sure no one was close enough to overhear. "Jacob was right. You showed up." I nodded. "I'm trying to make that a habit." He looked at me for a long moment. "I've been thinking," he said slowly. "Maybe we start small." My breath caught, but I didn't speak. "Come over for dinner," he continued. "No speeches, no expectations, just a meal." I nodded again. "I'd like that. Very much." "We're not fixing anything overnight," he warned. "I know. And Jacob thinks you're a superhero now. That's your problem, not mine." "I'll take it," I said, smiling. A pause. Then softer. "Thanks, Ethan." He didn't say, "You're welcome," but he didn't walk away either. Instead, we stood there together in the soft chaos of the gym, surrounded by glitter art and sugar cookies, and the echo of a child's voice saying, "He came back." That weekend, I went to their home for dinner. I brought lasagna, store-bought, not homemade, but I added fresh basil and baked it myself. Small steps. Lisa was there too. She greeted me politely, with a mix of civility and caution. We ate around the table where I once imagined I'd never be invited again. Jacob told jokes he didn't understand the punchlines to. Ethan talked about his work, Lisa mentioned a neighbor who'd adopted a dog that barked like a duck. It was ordinary and extraordinary because nothing exploded. No wounds were reopened. No one said, "Let's talk about the past." Instead, we passed bread. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe this was what reconstruction looked like. Not grand gestures, but steady hands rebuilding something slow and solid, brick by brick. After dinner, Ethan walked me to the door. "I don't know where this is going," he said. "That's okay," I replied. "I still get angry sometimes," he admitted. "You're allowed. And there's a lot we haven't said." I looked at him, steady. "Whenever you're ready, I'll be here." He studied me again, like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. When it didn't, he just nodded. "I guess we'll see." That night, I didn't write about the moment. I didn't record it in a journal or post it on some platform. I just sat in my living room, holding Jacob's rocket drawing, thinking about how one small invitation, drawn in crayon, had opened a door I thought was locked forever. The envelope was plain, white, unsealed. I found it resting against my front door late one Thursday evening. No knock, no phone call, just paper waiting to be discovered. My name was written across the front in Ethan's handwriting. I brought it inside, sat at the kitchen table where I'd eaten 1,000 solo dinners, and opened it slowly. The letter inside was short, just 7 sentences, but it held more than any apology, any explanation, any speech I had ever rehearsed. I used to think I had no father. Now I think I had one. Just late. Not perfect, not always present. But here now. And that matters. Jacob still thinks you're part wizard. I think maybe he's right. We're going on a trip this December, the first real family vacation we've ever had. Want to come with us? I stared at the page, read it once, twice, a third time. Each read-through felt like opening a window that had been nailed shut for years. He didn't say he forgave me. He didn't say it was fixed, but he said I was here now, and he invited me into something new. I stood up, walked to my bedroom, and retrieved the framed drawing Jacob had given me months earlier. The one with the rocket and the stick figures and the words, "Grandpa, Mom says you used to be bad. Are you better now?" I hung it on the wall above my writing desk. Then I pulled out my journal. Not the one I used for lists or memories, but the one I only opened when I needed to say something I hadn't yet found the courage to speak aloud. I wrote, "Maybe redemption isn't about undoing the past, but building something new on top of the ruins. Maybe love, once fractured, can be reassembled, not into what it was, but into something strong enough to hold the weight of who we've become." I closed the journal gently. It was the first time in years the final sentence didn't end in regret. We left for the trip 2 weeks before Christmas. Ethan, Lisa, Jacob, and me. 3 generations. 1 rental car. Ethan had chosen a small mountain town with snow-covered rooftops and a lodge that smelled like pine and cinnamon and fireplaces that hadn't gone out since October. On the drive up, Jacob played Would You Rather from the back seat. Would you rather fight 1 bear-sized duck or 50 duck-sized bears? I laughed. Duck-sized bears, definitely. Wrong answer, Ethan muttered with a grin. You'd be overrun. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences, moments where Ethan seemed to drift, memories surfacing unspoken between sentences. But no one walked away. No one raised their voice. No one gave up. On the 3rd night, we sat around a fire pit behind the lodge. Jacob had fallen asleep with a marshmallow still in his hand, his head resting on Lisa's shoulder. Ethan and I sat across from each other, the fire crackling between us. He stared into the flames, eyes unfocused. I used to wonder, he said suddenly, if you ever looked at old pictures and realized how much you missed. I nodded, slow. I do now. He didn't speak again for a while. Then, it was easier to be angry than sad. At least anger felt like control. I know, I said. Sadness. It makes you feel small. Yeah, he whispered. The fire popped. I'm still angry sometimes, he added. That's okay. He looked at me then. I think the worst part wasn't you being gone. It was not knowing if you even noticed. My chest tightened. I noticed, I said. But too late to change what I missed. Not too late to be different now. He nodded once, then looked back at the fire. We're planning another trip next summer. Bigger this time. Beach. Maybe a week. He paused. You should come. When we returned from the mountain trip, Jacob drew a new picture. This one had a beach, a sun with sunglasses, and 3 figures holding surfboards. Underneath, in slightly neater handwriting, he wrote, Me, Dad, Grandpa, the next adventure. I placed it beside the rocket drawing. 2 pictures, 2 moments, 1 past, 1 future. I didn't get everything back. The missed birthdays, the empty chairs, the unopened letters, those are still gone. But in their place, I've been given something different. Not a redo, a rebirth. And this time, I show up. Not to fix, not to erase, just to be there. And for now, that's enough.